Hello, how in the world are you? Now we come to step 3, turning our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. Okay, we started off, as we said, step 1, we're powerless. Step 2 told us that there is a power greater than ourselves. We can be reconnected. Step 3 begins to go into who or what that power is. It actually, for the first time, mentions the word God. Turning our will and our life over to the care of God. But then the wisdom of the 12-step group says, as we understood him. The truth of the matter is, wherever you go, if you talk to 2 Jews, they're going to tell you about the God they believe in as they understand him. If you talk to two Muslims, they're going to have 2 different understandings. If you talk to 2 Christians, they're going to have 2 different understandings. Wherever you go, people can only understand God personally for themselves. So they said you have to believe in the God as you understand him. You turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understood him. This is where many people come into a problem. Unfortunately, again, religion has caused much pain. Not spirituality, but religion has caused much pain. And because religion has caused much pain, to many people, the mention of God brings in pain. I've heard people say I'm a recovering, what have you, Catholic. I'm a recovering Presbyterian. Not to come down on any religion. There are spiritual people in all religions, but there are people who have been hurt in all religions. And as soon as you mention God, some people feel their pain come up to them. And that's why we say the God as you understood him, not as your mother understood him, not as your grandmother understood him, not as your father told you they had to be, but as you understood him. Turning our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. And one of the first things, and maybe one of the only things I need to say, is that the God I understand is a God of love. A God of love, not a God with a hammer up in the heaven that's going to beat me down every time I do wrong. I wouldn't turn my will and my life over to that kind of God. I wouldn't turn my will and my life over to a God who is not on my side, who's not going to partnership with me for the best. A God as you understand him, you get to choose. Nobody in any of the 12-step meetings is going to dictate to you the God that you need to believe in. That's something you have to handle and settle for yourself. Turning my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. But I have to understand God for me as a loving God. And because I believe that God is a loving God, that helps me to turn my will and my life over to God. Now, why do I need to turn my will over to God? Well, first of all, I already found out that willpower will not help me to overcome my addiction. My will is not strong enough. But my will is still there. What do I do with it? So often my will was to drink or to get high or to do something else. My will was to move in that direction. You can't say that addicts don't have willpower. They have willpower. They overcome all kinds of obstacles to get to what they want to do and to get to their drug of choice. They use their willpower in very ingenious ways to stay addicted. And so my will was moving in an opposite direction than where I really wanted to go. Somebody said it's self-will run riot. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that selfishness is the root of our problems. So here I said, a powerless person, a selfish person, and my will is twisted and bent basically towards me. I want it, even if it kills me, I want it. And so what they tell me to do is to turn my will towards God. I want to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. My will may be to go be with a prostitute. My will may be to go get some heroin. My will may be to go and overeat. That's what I will. Well, what do I do with it? Well, I take the small portion of my will that's healthy enough. There is a portion that has some freedom, I believe, and I take that part of my will and turn it over to the care of God. It is no longer my will, thy will be done. I take that will of mine that's distorted and turn it over to God. I turn my will over to God. But not only do I do that, I turn my life over to God. My will to me means my mind, my will, and my emotions. How I think, I give that over to God. My mind. What I feel, I give that over to God. My emotions, how I feel about a certain thing. Somebody said if I had to sit down and put my hands under my buttocks in order to not go out and practice insane behavior, to do that. Whatever it took that I had to do, no matter what I was feeling. When I first came around the rooms, I thought that I could just pray to a higher power and he would touch me some kind of way and take away my desire to do it. But when I came into the rooms, they told me, no, the higher power may not take away your desire. You may continue to desire to do it, but you can stay abstinent in spite of the fact that you want to do it. Well, that was a new thing for me because I was used to doing what I want to do, when I want to do it, how I want to do it. Even if it kills me, I would do what I want to do. King baby, I want it and I want it now. They told me no matter what you want, Bernard, set on it for a moment. Turn your will, your want, your willer over to the care of God. Go ahead, give it to him or her. Go ahead, give it to a higher power. Turn your will over to them. Well, that was big boy stuff to me. That was hard stuff to do. I got to turn over something that I really desire to a higher power. So I turned my will over to that higher power. Not only that, I turned over my life to that higher power. And what do I mean by my life? I turned over, first of all, what was happening to me that day. The emotions I was going through, the pain that I was going through, the obsession that I was going through. I believed that that higher power was going to take it away. That this craving would pass, that this shaking would pass, that this obsession would pass. I believe that. I turned it over to my higher power. I turned my will and my life over to that higher power. I turned over my life when it came to, will I get my wife back? I turned over my life, will I get my job back? I turned over my life, will I get my health back? Everything about it, will I get my finances back? I turned my whole life over to the care of a higher power. I wasn't scratching and clawing and trying to make a way and manipulate people and calling people up and begging them and being a doormat. I'm sorry. I took all of it and turned it over to a higher power. I took my tomorrows and handed it over to a higher power. I took my today and handed it over to a higher power. I even took my yesterday and handed it over to a higher power. All the things that I've done, all the people that might be after me, the people that might want to kill me, the things that I've done that will make people want to get back at me, I turned it over to a higher power. There wasn't much of anything I could do about it. I could not go back into yesterday and drag it into the day and somehow work on it and fix it. That was impossible. What I had done. My God, I had done it. All I could do was just turn it over. It was real. It was stinky. It was dirty, but I had to turn it over to a higher power. I took my will, my emotions, my feelings, my fears, my resentments, my anger, my cravings, my all in all, and I turned it over to, dare I say it again, a loving God. Maybe some hurdles that you have to jump to believe in a loving God with such atrocities as Katrina, certain things that we don't understand. But I just had to say to myself, I have to believe that God is a mean ogre, or I have to believe that God is a loving God who has a knowledge beyond my capacity to know. I'm finite and perhaps God is infinite, and perhaps God knows some things that I don't know. Somebody says God writes straight in crooked lines. Others say that we serve a God who works in mysterious ways. His what? Wonders to perform. I don't need to get into all that. All I know is that I'm not God. God is God. And because God is God, perhaps God knows some things that I don't know. What I know is I'm powerless. What I know is I do insane things. What I know is I need some help. And because I need help, I'm going to just make a decision. I'm going to make a decision to turn my will and life over to the care of God. I'm going to make a decision to step out on faith and actually believe that God is loving, that God didn't place me on this planet to torment me, that God didn't put me here to cause me to be an addict or a drunk or a pervert, that God had some real purpose for me that maybe I know not of right now, but I'm going to make a decision, because one decision just causes me to run away in defeat and say that God is mean and nasty and against me. I can choose that if I want to. I can choose that. I can choose to say that God is not on my side. I can choose that. I may even have enough evidence to make that coherent in my mind. Floods and earthquakes and good people dying young and people being gunned down. I may even have enough evidence to move towards the thought that God is evil and God works in darkness. There may be enough evidence in this world, but what does it do for me? So I make a decision. I make a decision because there is other evidence. There's the evidence of the birds singing. There's the evidence of the sun shining. There's the evidence of families loving one another. There's the evidence of the fact that I'm still living today in spite of the things that I've done. There is evidence for the other side. And as I stand and I look at both sides, I choose to make a decision to turn my will and my life over to a loving God, because that decision, well, hey, it's more pragmatic for me. It's more utilitarian for me. It works better for me to believe that. The other way drives me insane. This way drives me towards sobriety. It's a practical thing in some sense, but the real deal is, inside of myself, I really believe it's a God. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that God has placed in every man and every woman a knowledge of the fact that there is a God. All you have to do is be willing. Just crack the door a little bit and say, God, if you're really loving, I'm willing for you to show it to me today. If you're really loving, I'm willing for you to somehow come into my life today. I'm tired of you, God. You make me angry, God. I don't understand you, God. I've been through hell, God. What kind of God are you? But since I'm sitting here, I'm willing to just crack the door a bit. Just a bit. Big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says you just have to be willing. As a matter of fact, you can just be willing to be made willing. Is a little play on words I've heard. Just be willing to be made willing. And if you're just willing enough to just think, maybe there's a loving God, I believe that because of the overwhelming love that he has or she has for us, he'll show himself, she'll show herself strong. I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. Why don't you find your own higher power? Gain your own understanding of your higher power. Thank you very much.